I would now like to introduce you to our first keynote speaker, Łukasz Pawlik, Deputy Director of the Kraków Municipal Greenspace Authority, who will share the city's experience on green space management, and this will be in Polish, right? Yes, so for all of you English speakers, it's time to put on your headphones to get everything right. So, floor is yours, thank you.
Dzień dobry, zgadzam się, jak wygłoszę to po polsku z tłumaczeniem. Dzień dobry, witam serdecznie, reprezentuję Zarząd Zieleni Miejskiej. Jesteśmy miejską jednostką budżetową, która zajmuje się całością terenów zieleni w Krakowie. Od utrzymania do zakładania nowych terenów zieleni, do rozwoju i budowania systemu terenów zieleni.
Spaces and building the infrastructure and landscaping.
Oczywiście, jeżeli chodzi o zieleń w Krakowie, bardzo dużo robimy, bardzo dużo się dzieje. Roku na rok zadań realizujemy coraz więcej. Natomiast na początku chciałem powiedzieć, że jesteśmy...
However, at the very beginning, I'd like to mention that we are only a small cog in the big machine of switching Krakow towards city with low carbon footprint, biodiversity, friendly for inhabitants, with water retention, all those activities that are supposed to make our city ready for the climate changes. A lot of city authorities are somehow intertwined with our activity of green management authorities. So our activities are not random, of course. There are a lot of them. However, the main part or a guideline of our work, what to do and how to do, are 3 documents that I'm going to talk about later on during the day. So that is planning policy with 2040 perspective for the powiat. It is a document that has been created together with inhabitants, defining the plan and the goal of our activities. Another document, as Krakow is the city with a low forest surface. We want to double the surface of forest from 4 to 8% of the city area, and of course local zoning plans that are local law. In fact, they are being produced all the time, and those local zoning plans are included in new plans, of course. The process is very intensive, I mean, creating new plans. Krakow is a leader in Poland in the creation of zoning plans. 85% of city surface is included in zoning plans, and most of them include the green areas, needs protection of those areas, protecting, for example, river valleys that are very important in Krakow. Of course, we would not be able to do those things without the proper funding. We can see the changes in Krakow. You can see how the municipality has changed, direction has changed in 2015. City has noticed, first of all, the needs of inhabitants who requested those changes. And in 2015, our unit was created. And our task is development of green spaces. Right now, it's more than 2% of the city budget that is devoted to those goals. Of course, we want the development to be just, to be balanced. So we monitor the accessibility of the green spaces, parks, forests, so that the inhabitants could have just and equal access to green spaces. At the same time, we also look at the spatial planning, so that those areas should be connected. So that inhabitants could not only spend time under the trees, moving within those areas, so that altogether they create the setup of the city. Of course, there are various types of green spaces, from historical parks, then parks that are created along the roads, for example, but we've got a lot of various forms of green spaces. So here you can see the map showing our inhabitants how to discover the richness of the nature of animals in our city. So we publish various maps and guides, being a kind of user manual, how to discover the green spaces in Krakow. It's very important because our main goal is to differentiate the traditional or historical parks or green spaces that need some updating or restoration. And then we've got some places where the nature is the most important. And we want to have this natural aspects to be included in those areas, and inhabitants are only guests in those areas. Of course, they can use it with proper due respect. And there are also some supporting green areas that are also available. Why it is important? The forest, green spots in the river valleys, along the roads, or the skeleton network of green spaces can be used only for nature. They're not going to be developed. They're not going to be equipped with the infrastructure for recreation. Those are the places of water retention. There are the habitats for animals and plants. We've got various kinds of forms, like river parks, parks organized along the river valleys. They protect those areas, but they also create the forest zones. There are also some places that are being used for inhabitants as the recreation areas. In those places, we define places for nature only. So we reduce the use and maintenance of those areas, so that we want to support so-called fourth nature, natural succession. And those places in the city centers create the hotspot of biodiversity, where the nature plays the major role. We do it also in a historical parks, so that the inhabitants could see the natural processes in parks that are otherwise managed. While talking about the forest, we are increasing the area of forests in Krakow area. Right now, well, in a very brief future, we are going to have the park area increased by 1%. We invite the inhabitants to participate in the new forest arrangement. We want them to be engaged in the forest and the nature projects. And they do, they are willing to participate, but on the other hand, I would like to pay your attention to the scale. On one hand, we want to have 8% of forests in the city. However, we also do it in the city center. We create forest parks, Miyawaki Forest, because we also want to have this type of green spots in the city center, as they influence or improve biodiversity and natural development of nature. Here you can see some numbers. We have started with 1,370, now we've got 1,542 hectares of forests. You can see how big work has been done. Also, each type of green spaces are important. Here we've got some pocket parks. We've got more than 32 of those parks dispersed around the city, and they supply the inhabitants of our city who live in multi-story and multi-flat buildings, a place to meet, to integrate with each other, and places that are close to their homes. So they are much more readily available. And when transforming city space, we pay attention to this, to have a lot of green spots. And we want them to be a meeting place for our inhabitants. Of course, there's also a greater scale, river parks that connect various spots of green in various neighborhoods. Here you can see the Podgórze project that connects various parks like river parks or historical parks like Jerzmanowski Park, or river parks like Dwinka, for example. One park is being built right now or prepared right now. The zoning plan is being prepared right now, as we want to protect this area and to close the circle of green spots. We have already prepared the assumptions. We have done a stock taking. We know what kind of plants are present there, and then we are going to make those spots available for the inhabitants. Another project that was a very big challenge for us. There's a rail going through the city, and right now the metropolitan railway network is being constructed, and that means that some neighborhoods have been connected because the ancient old railway has been demolished. So now we've got some area next to it, and we want to use this area. It was decided by the inhabitants. So this area is going to be used for green spots. So thanks to the good cooperation with the city, between the city and the railway authorities, we leased this area. We prepare all the documentation. So we hope that in the beginning of next year, we will be able to start the work to create green parks in those areas. We use some new solutions for water retention here. We want to use the rainwater for watering those plants under the overpasses. And we create the bicycle paths, and we want to create a network of connections so that people can use it also as a walking ground. Then the Vistula River. A river going through the city is a part, an important part of creation of the river park. The river itself is very well developed already, but it also provides inhabitants with green spaces, giving access to important city, historical monuments. But as you can see here, there are also a lot of green spaces, giving way for communication, but also recreational places. However, we need to adapt it to the needs of today, and that is something that we are going to work on in the coming years. On one side, we've got, one hand, we've got Vistula River, but there are a lot of rivers joining it, and we want to create also green places outside of the Vistula corridor, make them available to the inhabitants, respecting the local natural conditions.
To są również też inne projekty. Takim projektem,
a project of creating, showing how important it is to have zoning plans.
jest to przestrzeń nowego parku.
And this is an area of new park in Czerzyny, created in a big new housing estate. It's very necessary, needed by the citizens. It's been created owing to the citizens' budget, and it's space which acquired a number of awards for the best public space. We managed to secure this area against development. So we were able to carry out this investment project, and citizens, when they moved in this housing estate, at the same time the park was being developed, and we provided services to new inhabitants. In our projects, we emphasize surface. We use surface which is permeable to water. And as regards urban squares and yards, we introduce new trees and shrubs and bushes so that they are friendly to the inhabitants. This is an example of the Spirits Square. It used to be a car park, and after we moved the surface, the pavement, now we have green areas, small architecture. Now it's a green urban yard in the city center. We also have small tasks which we carry out in a number of places on a regular basis. Wherever it's possible, we take away surfaces, pavements, and in those places with new shrubs and trees. It's important to encourage inhabitants so that they use pavements and passages so that the city is friendly to pedestrians. In the city center, this is a common space. There is no other space in cities. That's why such tasks are very important. So a number of trees and shrubs have been planted wherever there is some space. We do it. We make those places friendly to the inhabitants, and we want to put this distance between pedestrians and cars. This is a street in the city center, just street, a big challenge for us. And here, on the one hand, this is a street which used to be used by pedestrians, and it changed its function. Now we have mainly pedestrians, and it will be adapted to the needs of inhabitants, residents in this place. We have this is an example of good cooperation with urban heating plant, power plant, which provided heat to buildings along the street. And the surface have been reconstructed together with urban waterworks company. And this is also how we finance this project. So together with those entities, we restore the new surface. So we have over 55 trees. We have water retention. We have rain gardens, facade gardens, and all elements which will create friendly atmosphere and a friendly place to all users of that street. And this is, as I said, a street just for pedestrians. There is some access to cars to the buildings, to the residents, and also deliveries to coffee shops and restaurants is available. This is an old street, a historic street. A conservator of monuments agreed to such activities. So this is the first project which provides this new perspective how we should look at streets in city centers. We have a number of parks, manor houses, parks, different facilities, and we restore them. A Krakowski Park, you will see it tomorrow. We'll see numerous perennial meadows and plants, a lot of shrubs, and also infrastructure which attracts residents. Bednarski Park, this is another example. It was set up 100 years ago in the place where there was a quarry. This is the first example in Poland to use post-industrial areas. Now we are restoring this place, we're revitalizing this space. There are some repairs, the infrastructure was quite used up and it didn't meet the residents' needs, so it opens an issue of using industrial areas. Here we have another example of revitalized space and typical yard, square, a green place, Aksentowicza Square, an urban park in the city center. The whole greenery, which used to be here, remained here. We have a rain garden and recreational places, resting places. There's a fountain which lowers temperature, produces fog. Coming back to post-industrial areas, this is a big challenge for Kraków. Bagry, Lake Obszlasek, Rusiecki, like used for recreational purposes. We have places for bathing, for swimming, and also Libana Quarry in the city center, or we have an ecological place, and you can see natural succession here. This place was used for different purposes, so we use assumptions relating or following the principle that nature plays the main role. We also have Zakrzówek Park. On the one hand, we make it available to citizens, post-industrial place with a rich nature. So on the one hand, we make it available to the residents, and on the other hand, this park in a number of places will have xerotomic meadows and a lot of nature there, and those places are made available to residents. and we don't carry out the tasks related to nature in an intensive way. We also have area based on existing parks, Lotników Park. You will go there tomorrow, you will see it with your own eyes. There is a 1 hectare pond, a water reservoir, a recreational place, which is liked by Krakowians. We have pavilion, multi-purpose pavilion, a place of storing and a place of collection water for watering, a urban green project its place here. Apart from this space, we carry out tasks related to watering, using rainwater and monitoring of trees in that park. Not only an interesting park which supplements everything, we have a folder to manage rainwater from a large area, which is Tauron Arena, a stadium. Water appeared in underground garages of that building. So now we collect water in the park, and it solved the problem of flooding the garages inside. This is this folder. When you go there, you will see a part of meadow. And when it rains, when we have flash waters, this place is filled with water. Flower meadows project, another element introduced in street belts. It makes streets more attractive. It increases biodiversity, and it also shows that we can use grasslands in a different way, in a more ecological way. We can call it green revolution. Our activities are called green revolution. Our city becomes more green, but there are also challenges we have to meet. As I said, in Kraków, we have a railway, Metropolitan Railway, so we have to realize tasks on streets. On the right-hand side, you can see a street without trees, occupied by many cars. There are a lot of car parks, vehicles, and on the other hand, this place, next year, it will be a place where people would change vehicles. So there will be a railway station, and a number of residents will walk there. So they will change vehicles. They will come from trains to trams or buses. This is close to the city center. Now this place is not adapted to its new function. Next month, I think we should have all documents relating to construction design, and still this year we want to start this task. And next year, when railway will be there, when the residents will change vehicles, their communication vehicles here will be more adapted to them. So have rain gardens, means of communication adapted to different means of transport. And we emphasize pedestrians, traffic, bike lanes, and also cars will be allowed here, but it will be organized in a different way. This project responds to the needs of the residents, and the Metropolitan Railway will function there. I'm about to finish my presentation, but what we also pay attention to is education of residents, cooperation with residents. We want to do things together and pass the idea of nature, and we want to shape the sensitivity of the residents so that they can see new needs and benefits we have from greenery, from nature. Thank you. That's all from me.